Hello and welcome to the FARcast. I'm Alex Helmbrecht and joined here with my co-host Daniel Binkard. Our guest today is Professor of Music John Wojcik. Thanks for joining us, John. Appreciate you.
Glad to be here.
So let's jump right into it.
Sure, sounds good.
Coming straight down the orchestra pit, and we want to jump on stage.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Where did you grow up, and then where did your love of music develop?
Well, pardon me for being from Michigan. Okay, let's see, I got this right. Okay,
I'm well acquainted with this because my wife is from Michigan.
Grew up right here on the lake. That's why I do this, because I grew right on the lake. Little town called South Haven, Michigan. Big resort area now. A lot of folks from Chicago, which isn't too far away, come over in the summers when there were fancy boats and everything. When I grew up, typical small town, though, right here on Lake Michigan, South Haven, and then moved to Kalamazoo. My dad got a job there when I was like 6 and did grade school and junior high in Kalamazoo, and then high school and college in Lansing, Michigan.
Michigan State.
Yep, Michigan State. You got it right.
The campus, the campus that's big enough to have its own zip code.
There you go.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
They just made the Sweet 16 this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool
Congrats. So where did your love of music kind of develop? Had it always been there from when you were a child? Was there music in your home?
Well, that's a good question. There was music in my home. My mom was actually a very, very good pianist, and as she pursued that, she really would have done something with it, but she went into teaching more of a general education, teaching elementary education. But terrific piano player. I loved hearing her play, and even though she didn't play very much anymore, she'd still get on the piano now and again, Christmas time or whatnot, and play a little bit. Very impressed with that. When I was growing up, I listened to music on the TV. For instance, the Lone Ranger theme. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Rossini's William Tell Overture. Bum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-bum. And I remember I can see myself sitting in front of the TV watching the Lone Ranger and listening to that. My mom and dad also had a few recordings of like the Nutcracker Suite, 1812 Overture. And I just fell in love with that music as a kid. When I went to grade school, very fortunate to have a really fine band teacher that taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And Mr. Sanders was his name. And I'll never forget that I wanted to play the clarinet at first. You know, what do you know when you're 12 years old, right? So I figured, okay, clarinet, it's really cool the way you take the instrument apart in the little tiny case that it's in.
Yeah.
That's the reason I wanted to play. So he sat me down one day and he said, John, I really need you to play trumpet. And I just went, okay, Mr. Sanders. Gave me a cornet, and the rest is history. So a really fine elementary, middle school band teacher.
Well, that's
Mr. Sanders.
Yeah. What a testament to him. And I'm sure you're probably not the only student that he touched in that way. So.
I don't think so. I think he touched a lot of students like that because the school was actually not that big. And we also had a pretty good size middle school band.
No, that's
and
great.
It sounded pretty good.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I think at that age I did not know what a clarinet was. So you were definitely ahead of the game.
Ahead of the
curve. Anyway, so you have musical degrees in 3 different decades, which is pretty cool. I would almost want to ask, how has music changed in those 3 decades? How like teaching-wise, how did that change from when you first started until nowadays?
Oh, well.
Kind of a jumping off from what our original question was. But.
It's interesting. When you kind of gave me an idea of what you might ask, and you said, I saw you had degrees from 3 decades. I'm going, my first thought was, really? I had to get out my resume and take a look at that. Music has changed from the standpoint that from bands anyway, when I was growing up, you played marches or arrangements of orchestral pieces. And so even as I speak, band literature is growing. I mean, original pieces written for band. And the last 20 years, we've had some of the finest composers in the world, which is not always the case, loving the idea of writing for bands. And for instance, we played a piece I'll probably mention later on, but by a lady named Julie Giraud called K2, which is a mountain that's almost as big as Everest, but is much more difficult to climb. And she just wrote about an experience that she had studied about climbing that mountain. An incredible piece written specifically for band. So music... there's been the evolution of music. Of course, now electronics you find in music to a great extent. And people are still experimenting with electronics maybe since the 1960s, even earlier. 1960s, I think, is when it really took off, but don't quote me on that. And crazy stuff with electronics. But there's one piece that we may be playing that actually we contributed some money to the composer in what's called a consortium to have this piece written. You pay the composer to have the piece written. It's electronic, and it calls for the conductor to wear a click track. In other words, I would wear an earpiece, and it's click, 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 to make sure that the band is staying exactly with the electronics that are going on. And not quite ready to, I need to study that a lot more before we actually perform it. But so I don't, does that answer your question?
That does.
Well?
That does.
Okay.
I definitely want to hear some perspective on that.
Music,
yeah, that's true. Yeah. So, and then the original part of our question was, how did you decide that music education was the right career path for you?
Well, I went to college and was actually in pre-law.
Okay.
And then I just had first couple of years of college were just not really sure what I wanted to do. And I was actually working as a law clerk at a law firm, which really don't be too impressed with. I was just the go for run errands and stuff like that. But the head of the law firm, Mr. Willingham, came to me one day and he looked at me and said, "John, you want to be a lawyer, huh?" I said, yeah. Of course, you think the gift of gab, being up in the court saying, "And Your Honor, this is why my client is guilty or why my client is innocent, why that client's guilty." And that's what people think about with law a lot of times to get them interested. And he looked at me and he said, "It's a big grind." And I thought about it and figured, he's really right. Not that I wanted to stop being a lawyer at that time, but I'd always played my trumpet after high school, kept up with it. And I went to a dance one time, wedding reception, what have you. They had a little band there, and I hadn't played the trumpet really in 2 years after high school. So I got a chance to pick this trumpet up, and I'm playing. I'm going, you still got a lot of stuff left here.
Oh, yeah.
And so I decided my third year of college, I got involved with music, but then I needed some time off. So when I was 21, I got in a rock band and traveled around the Midwest for a full year. Got that out of my system, living out of a suitcase type thing.
Yeah.
I mean, no thanks. And went to Michigan State, and the rest is history.
So did you play trumpet in the band?
I played trumpet and conga drums.
Oh, nice.
Don't ask me to play conga drums. Please don't.
I think the next faculty recital.
Leave that to Richard Poots, our percussion guy, and some of his students. Yeah.
Surprise performance at the end.
Yeah. Right. Did okay. But I did trumpet. We had a trumpet and a tenor sax. So we kind of did a little wind section there with the rock band. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that kind of segues into the next question because you conduct the Wind Symphony and the Symphonic Band here at CSC.
Yes.
Maybe kind of explain, what are those bands like? Maybe what are the differences between them? And then talk a little bit about maybe what are your goals for those performers?
Okay. Very good question. I'll start with the community band. As you might think, that's for anyone in the community. But we call it the CSC Community Symphonic Band because CSC students take part in that too. And I never want students on campus to think, well, I'm not really that serious of a musician to want to do the Wind Symphony route. So, but community band's cool. Once a week, 7 to 8:30, and variety of people, ages, talent levels, but everybody is welcome, and it's a lot of fun teaching that group. Now, we get pretty serious. What we play, we want to play well, but for instance, that group, unlike the Wind Symphony, which does say more serious literature, for lack of a clearer term right now, there will be more fun pieces, let's say, with the community band, music melodies, movie melodies, musical medleys that the community, and I say medleys, I think I said melody there, but medleys that band plays. And so the goal with that group is to make sure there is a real element of fun with the music, but enough serious literature where you get to the serious side of playing and do the best you can to work it up to good performances. The Wind Symphony is, of course, our top concert band. That's all of our music majors who play a wind instrument or percussion are required to be in the Wind Symphony. We have so many semesters in the Wind Symphony. We play a degree higher of music. We rehearse 3 times a week, only 50 minutes a day, but we rehearse 3 times a week, whereas community band rehearses once a week. So a higher level of music as far as difficulty goes. But you still want to keep the educational value there. Play a variety of music because these are a lot of music. Our real push over in our music department is music education. Education being very big on our campus overall. So you want to present to those educators, composers, and different types of music that they will remember when they're out there teaching their own students. Not that they'll play music that is as difficult, but a lot of those composers, which is really nice to have out there, many of these very fine world-class composers, they'll write for little kids too. And terrific pieces on a very simple level.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. So,
well, that's interesting, and I'm curious to know, like, maybe the selection of pieces that you want those two bands to play. Is it kind of contingent upon the makeup of the band itself?
Partially, yes. And there actually are pieces, because right now we'd like to get more numbers in the community band, but honestly, a town of 6,000, we've got about 22 in the band right now, and fairly good instrumentation. I'm really pleased with the instrumentation in the band. But as far as the selection of music goes, if you'd repeat your question again, I'm sorry.
I just was curious about the pieces that you choose. Is it contingent upon the makeup of the band, or do you go into, this is 2023, we really want to perform this, and this, and
Sure.
kind of teach to it, or how's that selection process in your mind?
I tell my students this regularly. Picking music for a concert, you sweat blood over it if you're doing your job properly. What piece are you going to open with? How long? How difficult? The second piece, is it going to be a slower piece? Is it going to be a multi-movement piece? The third piece, and you go on, picking out 4, 5, 6 pieces for the concert, maybe community band 3 or 4 pieces. What's going to work really well? What about the flow of the music? A director of mine when I was in college once told me, select a piece for you as a conductor, select a piece for the kids that they'll enjoy for the students or the members of the ensemble, and pick a piece for the audience. Now, we stay a little bit more serious with the Wind Symphony, of course, but you can still cover all 3 of those areas very well, picking the more, say, serious literature. So you sweat blood when you're picking that music. But a little bit more fun element with community bands, and a little bit more serious element with the Wind Symphony.
And then, maybe finally a plug for the community band. If someone hears this and is interested to contact you.
Please do. Yes,
Okay.
contact me or contact the music program over in M Hall, our OA, Val Graff. Contact one of the other faculty members. But yes, please contact me. My information is very easy to find on our college website.
And I'll put it in the show notes for this episode too.
Great. Yeah. I mean, yes, please. If you think you want to play, you'd like to play in the community band, but you don't think you're good enough, please come. If someone comes into the community band, they haven't played in a long time, and they're embarrassed to play a note at all, they may just sit there. That's okay. Hopefully the next rehearsal, they'll play 2 notes.
Sure.
And the next rehearsal, 5 notes. Before you know it, they're coming along just fine.
And knowing you and some of the people who are involved with that, I know it's a very inviting atmosphere and certainly welcoming.
Thank you. Good. I'll try. I hope that's the case, yes.
Maybe Daniel and I will show up in some Devo costumes.
There you go.
bring our guitars. And
There you go. You know what? I tell you, see, ideas for performances, something like that could be an idea. Just have a gas, man. Put something crazy together. Let everybody have a blast,
So you mentioned music education and education in general being such a key piece of CSC. Tell us a little bit about the classes that you teach, and maybe, real briefly, what's a day in the life of a music educator at the college level?
Okay. Well, over, say, a 2-year period, I teach a variety of courses. Of course, you're probably familiar with probably every program on campus has a rotation of courses. This course is taught once every 2 years, this course every 3 years, what have you. Maybe a little bit more so in music, because music is one of the busiest degrees. I think really only elementary education is the busier degree from music. In other words, the number of classes you're required to take.
Yeah.
For instance, I teach part of what's called our practicum course that I'll teach tomorrow about 9:30, and this particular practicum is low brass 2. So last year we had low brass 1, where the students would play the trombone, brass instruments, and they need to pass off the trumpet and the trombone. So low brass, last semester we started, as I mentioned, the trombone, and if somebody's already a trombone player, they might play euphonium or tuba.
Okay.
And then this semester is low brass 2, where we just kind of continue where we left off with low brass 1. And so you teach, the idea there is that especially if somebody is not a brass player, or if they're a trumpet player like me, you learn how to play trombone. Or a clarinetist, you learn how to play trombone. And then there are the practicum classes that Dr. Stevens teaches, our woodwinds person, Dr. Puzo, our percussion person. Everybody who's not a percussionist become familiar with percussion. And then with the woodwinds, I believe Dr. Stevens has them pass off flute and saxophone in particular.
Okay.
So a trumpet player learning sax. When I was in college, I took sax, I took cello, I took French horn, and a couple other instruments too to learn the basics of them, clarinet also.
Wow.
Yeah. So then other than that, I teach, kind of look at a list here, instrumental conducting, which is literally teaching the motions of conducting, and the test in that class, to give a better idea of what's going on, the test would be the students actually conduct and sing a musical excerpt while they are conducting. So they do those things simultaneously. And the idea of singing the musical excerpt is to continue what they learned in theory, where oral, A-U-R-A-L, right, the hearing part of theory, the oral part of theory, they actually have to learn to sing excerpts in theory. So we continue that with conducting, but then add the element, no, you got to just sing and conduct at the same time because we don't have a band in front of them, and to challenge them to keep that musical sense in a very good place.
Wow, those students do sound busy.
Yes, indeed.
They are busy.
Holy smokes.
But I also teach, just real quickly, private lessons on brass. I'm the brass teacher here. Music for the classroom teacher, which is a blast. I love it. It is elementary education students who learn how to incorporate music into their elementary classes. So the pressure's on me in that class. They don't have, it's required by the state to take the class, but they don't have to incorporate music into their classes at all. So the idea of the class for me is from beginning to the end. They have to do their assignments, et cetera, but to encourage them and have them become comfortable with, because there's a real discomfort if you're not, say, a working musician, a real discomfort in incorporating music into a non-music class. How do you do it? And even this, as little as 1, 2, ready, go. You think anybody can do that? No, there's a great discomfort. When you're in front of a class and you're going 1, 2, ready, go, you've got to learn that simple conducting technique. You have to learn how to become really comfortable doing that.
Right.
So I'm having a blast with that class, and hopefully encouraging our elementary education students to incorporate music into their non-music classes.
Create a memorable lesson for that particular day in a student's life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for, right?
That's great.
A couple other classes I teach, instrumental music methods, which very simply is how to be a band director off the podium, which is a lot. Marching band techniques, which is part of, Jeremy Quick teaches our music technology course, and then I have an 8 short classes as part of that course that I teach marching band drill writing to the students. So that basically covers my...
That's just one day.
Oh, yes. Yeah, then on Tuesday. No, yeah. So, with the rotations and whatnot, for instance, let's see, gosh, I'm not going to remember all this, but Mondays, I teach at 9 o'clock, I teach music elementary classroom. To 10 o'clock, I teach instrumental conducting. Then 5 o'clock, I teach the wind symphony. So Monday is a pretty open day for me. Yeah. Tuesday, I teach a practicum course. That night is the community band, Tuesday night, 7 to 8:30, of course, folks. Please join us. And then we have, meetings that we're obligated to go to. We have student recital on Tuesdays at 4, where not every Tuesday, but our students will periodically, who are taking private lessons, or music majors, will play for their peers and learn how to deal with performing in public. And then, of course, Monday, Wednesday, Friday is the same, and Monday, Tuesday, Thursday is Wind Symphony at 5. Eagle Band gets in there. Yeah. On Fridays, 3 to 5 during the seasons. We're no longer performing the rest of the semester. The probably roughly 50 hours they put in at the beginning of the semester with basketball games and rehearsals, I think, they've kind of had their time. Yeah. They're covered for the one credit they get for that class. But a lot of fun teaching that. I thoroughly enjoy teaching.
Excellent.
Really enjoy it. Yeah.
That's great. So we kind of mentioned a little bit about the band, and this is mainly my question as a non-musician.
Okay.
But are there a certain number of participants, or maybe a certain number of instruments that need to be included to be considered a band?
Well, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay. You've got the piccolo. Generally, 1 piccolo in a band, sometimes 2, but 1 piccolo. Some pieces are written for 2 piccolos. Okay, so but just the basic piccolo, flute 1, flute 2. And most of these, not all, but most of these need multiple players on them, like maybe 2, 3 people to a part for a full band. Wind ensemble would be 1 to a part, but piccolo, flute 1 and 2, oboe, bassoon, clarinet 1, 2, 3, bass clarinet, alto sax, tenor sax, bari sax, trumpet 1, 2, 3, horn, French horn 1, 2, 3, 4, trombone 1, 2, 3, baritone, tuba, and there's so much percussion now being written, for percussion sections nowadays, in band music in particular. 6 percussionists is really what you need. So numbers at least into the 40s, and really just getting over that 50 mark, 52, 53, 54 maybe, for a true full band.
So it's a sizable amount of people.
Sizable amount of people, right. Right.
So I may have even asked you this in a conversation once upon a time, but I'm always interested in the logistics of it to get string sections.
Okay.
And I know it seems at a school of our size, we don't necessarily have a band that includes string sections. No. What goes in, like, what are the numbers needed for that? How big of a school do you need to get to before you have that? Because the reason I ask is purely selfishness. I want to hear not just Beethoven symphonies, but some like John Williams music on these performances with the strings.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Strings are really what started instrumental music. You came along with the voice, and the voice was developed. And in fact, way early on, when the Catholic Church, way back in the Middle Ages, was kind of in charge of how things went with society, they didn't allow instruments in church. And instrumentalists were kind of looked down upon during that time period, kind of lower elements of society. So the first time the church said, well, okay, we'll take that instrument, was the violin, because it has such a singing quality to it.
Okay.
So strings have been around for, thousands of years, string instruments really, and hundreds of years maybe a little more accurate. But you do need, unfortunately, basically the larger systems will have the orchestras. For instance, the larger systems near us, Rapid City. I can't speak to Stevens, but I believe, yes, Stevens has an orchestra, and Central definitely has an orchestra because I've experienced before.
So they've got like a big enough student body to accommodate the positions?
That's essentially it.
Okay.
To have a full-size orchestra, you need, you have, for the strings only, of course, then the winds, are just a smaller group, small band with the winds and percussion. You have first and second violins, and the larger orchestras in the world will have 20 of each, like 20 first violins, 20 second violins.
I've seen videos like that, at least.
Yeah, 10 violas, which is kind of, I don't mean to say make anybody mad at this, but the viola is kind of like a violin with a thyroid condition. Okay, it's kind of just a much larger violin. Sorry, I mean to. Hopefully, little joke there. Yeah. And then about maybe 10, 12 violas. My numbers give and take here, of course. Cellos about the same, maybe 8 cellos, and then string basses, 6, 7, 8 string basses. So you do need, and I say unfortunately, only the larger systems really have enough resources available to them with teachers and students that they could field a full orchestra. Right. And of course, medium-sized schools might have, 10 violins, 2 violas, 2 cellos, 2 basses, something like that. And that can be a very, successful orchestra.
I want to say it seems like we may have had student recitals where they might have had enough to do a quartet for a piece, but that's going back a few years now. I don't know. I'm not sure what's been going on recently. Do we have a lot of students that are playing strings?
There probably are some on campus. We have one young lady, Tamisha Sherman, who is a violinist. Okay. And she is actually, she kind of joined late, so she couldn't join us for the concert tomorrow, which I want to put a plug in too, our concert tomorrow evening. But she actually plays violin. She plays the flute part in the community band, and she's part of the flute section.
Multi-talented.
Yes.
All right.
That's great.
Yeah, let's see, where are we at here? Okay, let's dive in here. You play the trumpet.
Yes,
and can you tell us a little bit more about that instrument? And I think you've mentioned some of the other instruments you play. Yeah, if there's anything more that the audience should know about this stuff.
Well, Daniel, first off, on the trumpet, this is an accurate statement, but I play the trumpet, and hands down, it's the greatest instrument in the world. No two ways about it. So, it's like most instruments, it's a very versatile instrument. Yeah. Trumpets are an integral part of the concert band. They're an integral part of the symphony orchestra, and then there are many chamber groups that fit the trumpet's role. For instance, my actual favorite playing scenario is the brass quintet: 2 trumpets, French horn, trombone, and tuba.
Okay.
You can play as loud as you want to, as soft as you want to. There's more, say, obligation to you for playing a lot more than, say, in a concert band where you're going to be resting a lot more, of course. But there's the brass quintet, other chamber groups that the trumpet can take part of. Can play very low and get some really beautiful tones down low. And, of course, every male, anyway, knows about the screech part of the trumpet because that's, hey, how do you play trumpet? Loud and high, man. Yeah, let's go for it, that male part of it. But quite honestly, in my lifetime, quite earlier on, it was mainly a male instrument, considered a male instrument.
Okay.
Well, as females came into playing the trumpet more and more often, I remember, I'll never forget it. I don't remember where I was, but I'll never forget the sound. I was walking by a practice room or something, heard a young lady, I think a peer of mine, playing the trumpet, and I went, wow, she's playing that really beautifully. That is really musical. Maybe there's something more to the trumpet than just playing loud and high. Mm-hmm. So our female trumpet players brought a real distinctive, to me anyway, musical quality to playing the trumpet that I think has really helped to quite an extent.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And do you play any other instruments?
Well, you have to learn the basics, basically all the band instruments, although I didn't learn oboe or bassoon, but I did. I took a class in clarinet, class in French horn, class in trombone. And if you take a class in trombone, you figure pretty much you can do the tuba and baritone, okay? Because tuba and baritone are both valve instruments like the trumpet, just calls for a lot more air. In fact, to play the tuba, if you don't mind getting off track a little bit, which I like to do, by the way, playing the tuba, say, well, Dr. Wojcik, how do I play this tuba? I say, stick as much of your face in that mouthpiece and blow as much air as you possibly can. And quite honestly, that's it. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Get the whole variety there.
More so than you were expecting.
There's always more. There's always more to discuss. Nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
So, John, you've been very active on the homecoming committee that I also
Thank you.
Serve on, and
Yes.
you've done a really nice job the last few years, in particular, bringing back middle school or high school students to march in the college's homecoming parade.
Sure.
How rewarding is it to get those younger students on campus and then to kind of build out, because CSC has a pretty good track record and a nice history of welcoming bands to
Agreed.
perform.
Yes.
So what are you trying to build toward?
Well, I think the more students we get on campus, the better. The positive experience we can give them. For instance, I pass out some of the music that our Eagle Band plays. And I'll tell the bands that come is when you join us at halftime, you can play some of your own music. If you want to be featured on a tune, we'll have you featured on one of your tunes that you've worked up. And some of these bands are marching bands, so they'll play one of the tunes they play out from their marching band show. And then I'll also tell them, join the Eagle Band, as many of the tunes as you feel comfortable playing. And the next step to that is maybe picking out a few really easy tunes that everybody can play, won't take much time to put together because they've got their obligations at their schools. 3 or 4 tunes maybe, haven't really decided yet, but send that music, purchase that music, send that music to them. Of course, you have to be careful with copyright, but you send music out, it just has to be destroyed after the performance. Okay, so do want to put a plug in there for copyright, but and then so everybody can play at the same time with the Eagle Band. But it seems to be a very positive experience. I've gotten really good comments back, and part of the reason I feel good about it is we've had returning bands from year to year. And 3 years ago, we had 3 bands with 40 people. 2 years ago, we had 10 bands with 250. And last year, we had 11 bands with 250. Had one band, a couple bands really small, just brought in a few kids. But it's been very rewarding, Alex, really very, very rewarding. And I hope to see the numbers continue at that level. And if you don't mind my putting in a thanks to admissions, and this is originally from Tara Hart, when my second year of doing this, I called admissions. I said, look, we've got all these kids coming now. It looks like 250 kids coming. Let's get admissions involved. And they said, well, how do you want us to get involved? I said, I don't know specifics, but let's kind of just put our heads together. Anyway, Tara Hart came to my office one day, and she's thinking, she goes, well, John, how about if we give them all free lunch? I went, sure.
Everyone likes lunch.
Yeah. Well, John, how about if we give them all a free T-shirt? All from admissions. Admissions paying for this. I'm going, yeah. It'd be really good. So definitely a plug to admissions, Alex.
Yeah, definitely.
That they have really helped bring these kids to campus.
Wonderful.
And I've already gotten the go-ahead from Tammy Selby to let these bands, or when I put out the invitation, say you'll be provided free lunch and free T-shirts.
Oh,
again.
that's great. And I think, you alluded to it a little bit ago about playing during some of the athletic contests at home.
Yes.
But I think bands just add such a wonderful atmosphere, whether it's to a parade or to a sporting event or whatever, that is just really great. And when it's not there, you notice it. And but when it is there, it makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've heard that many, many times from many people. I never get tired of hearing that. We, even though we're a secondary element, if the band's not there, they still play the game, and they might play as well or better than they did if the band were there. You just don't know. But to be a part of that is a lot of fun, and it's just really good to hear people when people say to me, no matter how many times I've heard it, that the band adds such a nice quality to the athletic events.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and it's a good addition to the broadcast. We get a timeout, and that's a nice element. I can grab a close up of the drummer, or ideally somebody hammering on a cowbell. That's my favorite.
Well, and I appreciate that too, Danny. Since you do the videos for the games, Daniel, you do get that band featured every now and again.
It's nice to show
up on the
national
board.
anthem. Get you guys for that at the very least. Yeah,
sure,
definitely.
Yes.
So the next question is what's something memorable, and places or pieces. So let's start with places. Like, where was a fun place to perform for you? Maybe in those roadhouse days of youth.
Yeah, we played some interesting places. A rock band just traveling across the Midwest a little bit. Some places were set up very professionally with a really nice stage. Other places just kind of crammed in a quarter, in a little corner, I should say. So a little corner there, a little uncomfortable. I remember one place we played, the stage was like almost 20 feet off the floor, and then you were pushed back, and then there was a big kind of almost warehouse area where people came in and danced. So that was a lot of fun, and I'd say from places, those are the most memorable. But there's one other place I like to throw a plug in for that, not a plug really, but a place where I performed. It was really quite fascinating. Is years ago, a friend of mine called me and said, "John, I'm taking a tour of Northwest America, United States, and I need a trumpet player with my band this summer. You want to come along for a week or two?" I said, "Yeah, sure." We knew each other from college days, and Bill Carson was his name. Anyway, one of the places we performed was at the foot of Mount Rushmore.
Nice.
We have a very nice amphitheater down there.
Yeah.
And it was really fun playing there. It was not for 4th of July or any special day, just, hey, we're on tour, can we play at the Mount Rushmore? I said, sure, we're open, and performed there. So that was quite memorable. And of course, they were, all the guys were up there,
Big audience.
Couldn't see them, but still knowing that, that incredible.
Yeah, that's a good backdrop.
Monument was your backdrop. That was pretty incredible.
Oh, that's great.
That's neat.
So then the other half of the question is, what are some of the memorable pieces that you've played, or that, kind of maybe something that's always a good go-to, always a comfortable piece to play again?
Oh, comfortable. Okay, comfortable piece to play again. That's interesting. One of the most memorable pieces, and not to say a comfortable piece, because you really have to work this up tremendously, but when I was doing my master's degree, which was in trumpet performance, the first piece I opened with was called the Artunian Trumpet Concerto, and the composer was Artunin. He wrote it for a very famous Russian trumpet player at the time called Timothy Dakshitzer, and wrote it for him, but it took the trumpet world by storm, and I had the honor of opening my graduate recital with that piece, and I really felt a real connection with that piece. There was a comfort level there. I mean, master's recital, a lot of work going into it.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to play that again, I'd say, okay, give me about 3 months.
Yeah,
and
nice.
I'll get back in on that. But that's always been memorable. That's quite a while ago. I was in a community orchestra that was terrific in Enid, Oklahoma, about 40,000 in the town, and we brought up string section from Oklahoma City.
Okay.
To help augment our orchestra, and we did a piece by Anton Bruckner, his 4th Symphony. It's about an hour in length. Bruckner lived in the 19th century, and figure, Beethoven on steroids almost.
Very nice.
Brass like crazy. And at one time in this orchestra, we actually had every member of the wind section had a master's degree in music. So we were able to access some pretty good stuff. And putting that small orchestra, putting that Bruckner's 4th together was really exciting. And then, of course, I mentioned brass quintet music.
Yeah.
A lot of great music with brass quintet. As far as pieces that I like, This might be off track a little bit, but occasionally in town, Joe Richling, the band director at Chadron High School and trumpet player, Joe for years has played taps at military funerals along with the Honor Guard, or VFW Honor Guard. And it was getting so busy one summer, or during the period he was playing, he said, John, can you help me out and play? So the last couple of years I played taps at military funerals, and it's always a moving experience. Of course, the setting, you're honoring someone who has passed. And it's a beautiful, simple tune that I absolutely love playing. In fact, I had the honor of playing it when 9/11 2 years ago landed right on a home football game. I had the honor of playing taps during the halftime ceremonies, and it never ceases to move me, and I think move those who are listening too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there are people sometimes you see them in tears, in a very good way, releasing the emotion, especially if it's at a funeral. But yeah, I'd say that's maybe the most memorable piece that if you had a piece you could repeat over and over and over again, that'd probably be it.
Yeah, the simplicity, really.
Yes.
Lovely.
It seems almost inappropriate to ask, but I'll ask it anyway. Are there any guilty?
We have a lot in common.
Are there any guilty pleasure pieces that maybe you'd only play in the privacy of your own home?
I'd say there's some rock music that people might be interested in. I would. I enjoy that. If somebody's hearing it, they'd be going, "Would you please turn that off? Turn that off, please." In fact, when I exercised at a previous job I had, it was a communal exercise area for the faculty at a school a number of years ago, and I had this friend of mine put together an exercise tape for me, and it wasn't your pretty classical stuff, which is great. Technically, exercising to Mozart is really beneficial. With a steady beat or whatnot that Mozart has. But this particular piece, it was just crazy rock music, and somehow that tape disappeared. And I'm not sure who took it, but I think it was one of the people I worked with that said,
they just weren't feeling it, huh?
Rid of that. Yeah, I wouldn't play it loudly or anything when other people are in the room, because I figured they were their own tastes, but it came up missing.
Dang. We need some variety in our weight room music.
So that was probably my secret.
All right.
Some of the stuff I listen to that's not, stoic and classical and Beethovenish and etc.
Probably why is this trumpet guy listening to 7-string guitars with drop D tuning?
Oh, it's a great tune. I love it. Yeah, it's great, man. Louder, turn up the volume.
So you mentioned exercising. I know that you like to do that outside of work because
Yes,
I think
do.
I live near you. I often see you walking around the track or walking your dogs.
Sure.
What else do you like to do outside of work?
Well, I like to read. I like to read a lot. I generally alternate between a nonfiction book and a fiction book. 2 books ago, I read actually a book on the Battle at Gettysburg that was written by a general, but the book was written in 1940 and then had 9 or 10 more editions of it made. And I'd read some materials about Gettysburg in the past, and I was just fascinated. It was the most detail I'd ever read about the battle and the most I learned about it. So I just kind of showing interest.
Sure.
I'm a history buff.
Yeah.
So especially I'll read a nonfiction book about history. And of course, a lot of history is war. And then I just finished a book. My nonfiction choice was a Dean Koontz book. And I've read about a good number of his books. And Dean Koontz, of course, a science fiction kind of thriller, the typical New York best-selling author. Yeah. And I think it was The Dark Blue Sky, it was called, but pretty interesting book. So I'll alternate nonfiction, fiction, and generally I read mostly when I'm about ready to in bed and turn the lamp on and read. Boy, I tell you what, I'm reading all of a sudden the eyes are going, well, okay, I'll stop.
Yep.
And boy, you fall right asleep.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So you said you've read a reasonable number of Dean Koontz?
Yeah, actually, I think I like to keep track of the books I've read. I don't know why.
I find if I don't, then I'll try.
Yeah, right.
Are you among us still waiting for the third Moonlight Babe book? 20-odd years now?
You know what? I'm not.
Christopher Snow, he can only go out at night.
That's a Dean Koontz book?
Yeah, he's written 2 of them back in the late 90s.
I need to get that information from you.
Oh, sure.
I haven't read those.
Yeah.
I read the Odd books.
I've read one of those, I think. I need to catch up.
Yeah, those I read all four.
Okay.
That was, it might have been a fifth. They kind of put online or something, but I read
Yeah.
the 4 odd books, terrific stuff. And then he did that series, I don't remember the name, but it was a lady, and the story was 5 volumes.
Okay.
And it was just an amazing, I mean, holy cow. It's
I
just
think
incredible.
I've heard the reference. I haven't read any of those, but that's
Okay.
one of the more recent series that he's done, isn't it?
Very recent, yeah.
Okay.
So last 10 years or so.
Right.
Right, but man, I mean, 5 books. And
Oh yeah. You kind of wish he'd finished some of those earlier ones that he'd started. If you can do
Yes,
5 of
yes.
this or 4 of that.
Let me get that info from
Oh,
you,
sure,
man,
sure.
when we're done here.
So we're getting close to the end now, John.
Okay.
We're on to our quick hitting questions.
look out.
What's one of your favorite movies?
Ben-Hur.
Oh, I love Ben-Hur.
All right, Charlton Heston, though.
Yeah.
Charlton Heston,
I
right?
haven't seen the recent ones.
Okay.
I mean, just the soundtrack alone for Ben-Hur, I love that.
Oh, no kidding. I refuse to watch the recent Ben-Hur that was put on.
I've had no desire to.
It's not Charlton Heston, forget it. Ain't
Yeah,
gonna work, man.
that's some good march music in that movie.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Very good music. Miklos.
Rosa,
Rosa.
I'm not sure.
Miklos wrote the score, and he was a very famous composer for films in Hollywood for many, many years. Terrific score in that. I
And I'm
love the
trying to
storyline.
think what other films he did. Because that's the only one I can remember that he scored.
You asked me. I can't tell you, but he did a large number of movies.
Did he do
scored
westerns
for
at all?
Boy, you're really catching me on that one.
I'm gonna have to look him up, and
Yeah,
I need to expand
yes.
my Rosa
Sure.
horizons.
But he wrote a number of. He wrote for a number of movies that won Academy Awards
Yeah.
for his music.
See, I'm drawing a complete blank because I know I've seen his
I am
name
too.
associated
I
with
am
some of those
too,
other
right.
famous movies, and I just can't
I
remember.
am too. Right.
That's good stuff.
What's a hidden talent?
Okay, here's my hidden talent. I don't know if it's that much of a talent now, but when I was in high school, I played a little basketball.
Yeah.
And one time during practice, you're just going to have to believe me on this, I shot 54 free throws in a row without missing one.
Well done.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Now, I could probably make it 3, 4, 5.
That's still doing good. Yeah, I don't know that I'd trust myself to get 2 in a row.
And I might have to practice to get up to that level.
Yeah,
again.
I don't even know if I shot 100, if I'd make 54. So good job.
So I don't know if that's a hidden talent, but
that
it was
counts.
a talent that at one time I did have at one practice.
Yeah. What is the best piece of advice that you received when you were a college student?
I'd say never give up.
Yeah.
You're going to have those days where we all know this, right? Everybody I'm speaking to, that's even college students, that day you get up, you're going, I just don't want to do this anymore, And so I come back to, this isn't so much advice, but what makes me get out of bed, besides to never give up, well, why never give up? And I'll sit there and I'll go, okay, you idiot, you don't want to go in today, it's an obligation. It's work. There's a work element to it, besides the many rewards that are there to keep you going. But it's got to go, hey, idiot, why'd you get into music? Why are you a teacher? I love to direct bands, and I love to play my trumpet. Are you still doing that? It's my other person talking. I get over here. I said, yeah, I'm still doing that. Okay, jackass, get out of bed.
Yeah.
Quit crying.
Yeah.
Quit complaining. Yes, you have to attend this meeting. You have to do this. You've got to do this project. That's part of the game. Shut up and keep enjoying yourself.
Yeah. It's
But
true.
but
It's
never
true.
give up.
There
Never-
could be a lot worse things to do on this given day.
Exactly.
Very much so.
Yep.
Very much so.
Yeah,
Oh,
well said.
also advice, I just remembered this moment. Ken Bloomquist, my college band director who just passed away in the late 80s a couple of years ago, he once said, I don't know if it was just to me or it was the class, but he said, the day that I stop learning something new about this business, I'm going to retire. So be a lifelong learner. Never stop learning something new. Yeah.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah.
Intellectual curiosity is a good thing.
Intellectual curiosity is a good thing,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely. John, do you have a favorite musician or maybe composer?
Yeah, a couple. If I really, that old question, if you're put in a room and you'd listen to one piece of music, a composer, who would it be? And that was rather common knowledge for everyone, but Beethoven.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the music of Beethoven. And if it was one piece, probably his Fifth Symphony. Just a terrific piece of music to me.
I think I've heard of him.
A little known
very good.
European
High five,
composer.
High five. Okay. High five, Alex. Okay.
Really proud of myself.
Carlo Muti he's 82 years old, currently the director of the New York Philharmonic, and just an incredible musician to watch conduct. We talk about the nonverbal side of conducting. I think we were speaking about before the actual podcast, but incredible to watch this guy direct. Just love watching him direct. Incredible musician. Then a gentleman who really got me turned on to the trumpet and kept me going when I was in high school was a gentleman named Rafael Mendez, who was of Mexican descent. I believe he lived in the United States, though. Just an incredible trumpet player, and I would listen to recordings of him while I was playing solitaire. Yeah, and just an incredible musician. But those are three that came to mind.
Kind of diverting a little bit, but only because you mentioned Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
Who are the trumpet players on the Mount Rushmore of trumpet players?
Oh, wow. Well, definitely Rafael Mendez. There's a gentleman now, he's probably pushing his 60s, Alan Vizzuti, who was a very fine trumpet player, but he's in about his 60s. Doc Severinsen, who just quit touring in his 90s, played for, 30, 40 years, incredible. Wynton Marsalis.
Finally, a name I'm familiar with.
Wynton Marsalis is of African-American descent, and he was the first really African-American come through and just bust through playing all of the classical literature on trumpet. You name it, he mastered that trumpet, and then he went very strongly into jazz. And he's now the leader of the, I forget the actual formal title of it, but the jazz band at the Lincoln Center for the Juilliard School of Music. But he's an incredible music educator, incredible player. So those are some of the big name trumpet players that come to mind immediately.
Nice.
Bud Herseth, Adolph Herseth, the first chair player in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra for many, many, many years, probably, maybe to this day, the world's greatest symphonic trumpet player, and just amazing. Kind of grew up with him also. He passed quite some time ago.
Okay. Well, that's our fifth face on the mountain then.
Yeah.
We're gonna add it. Yeah.
You gotta add it.
Yeah, I think that would be very fair. Trumpet player up there. I can see that, yeah.
So the final question is, what word comes to your mind when you think of Chadron State College?
That was probably the easy one. You gave me a list of questions earlier, Daniel. And thank you for doing this, by the way. But that was the easiest question to answer. I'd say family.
Yep.
Yeah.
True enough.
Family. You meet so many people. I've known Alex. How long do we know each other? How long
Yeah.
have we known each other? We live pretty close to each other, and we're not in the same area at all. But you meet people across campus in all different fields, even staff. And when I say even staff, not just faculty, but just people that work at this campus. You get to know them, and you get to trust them, and they help you out in any way, shape, or form they can. They bend over backwards for you, and hopefully I do the same for my colleagues. But family.
Yeah. It is always nice going through, if I'm going through M Hall to another place or, any of these buildings, you're guaranteed to see somebody that you're happy to see that day.
Yes.
You've got a few minutes to chat with them.
Exactly.
It's a good thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Well, that wraps it up for us. John, thanks again for coming in and joining us today.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
You bet.